Are you a real estate investor looking to elevate your income, freedom, and lifestyle? If so, optimize your daily performance by downloading our free guide, Raising the Bar, 5 Steps to Elevate Your Habits at elevatepod.com. In this guide, created by yours truly, you'll learn why you do what you do, how to easily institute cues in your environment to trigger desired behavior, directly applicable steps to create a fulfilling future, and much more. Get your free copy now at elevatepod.com and kickstart your new habits today. Your future self will thank you.
Welcome to Elevate, the masterclass where we dissect the elements of exceptional achievement and lifestyle design with a focus on personal growth and real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Elevate Nation, welcome back. This is Tyler Chesser. I'm so thankful to have you here, and I'm blessed and grateful to be sitting with Whitney Elkins-Hutten today. Today, you're going to learn about the mindset required to develop and create the life of your dreams, to design the life of your dreams. You're going to learn about how a recovering perfectionist shedded her identity to create success in real estate. Perhaps how that may have correlated to your own journey, your own story about your own identity. You're going to learn about where your beliefs have come from. You're going to learn how to wedge space between a belief that's not serving you and a belief that can serve you and will serve you. You're going to learn about strengthening the muscle of a resourcefulness mindset so that you can put yourself in position to design the life of your dreams through real estate. Today's episode is so good. I'm so excited about this. Elevate Podcast is all about mindset, mind expansion, and personal development for high-performing real estate investors. And yeah, I guess more too, right? I don't know where that word came from, but more amazingness today. I'm your host, Tyler Chesser, and I'm a professional real estate investor and high performance coach. It is my job to decode the stories, habits, and multifaceted expertise of world-class investors and other experts to help you elevate your performance and lifestyle. Are you ready to take it to another level? It is time. Let's raise the bar today. If it's your first time listening to Elevate, welcome. We're so thankful to have you here, and you're important to us, and we are going to continue to pour in massive value into your cup. Just know we have an entire library waiting for you to dive in, and it's a tremendous amount of depth of valued content that's actionable, that's life-changing, that can change the paradigm of your business. So I want to thank you. I want to welcome you for being a new listener to Elevate. If you've been here before, you know the deal, you know the drill. I'm asking you to pay the fee. The fee is to pay it forward. By the way, whether you're here for the first time or it's 250 plus times for you, we just ask that you share this episode with a friend. All you have to do is grab the link, send it in a text message, an email, or post it on social media, or just tell someone else about Elevate Podcast. The only way that we can continue to grow is if we earn the value of your introduction. So I'm asking you from the bottom of my heart today, please pay the fee and go ahead and do that now. It'll take 5-10 seconds. That's it. And it makes all the difference. And we just thank you. We appreciate all of the introductions. We're continuing to grow leaps and bounds, and we're thankful for that. The only way that we can continue to add massive value is if we continue on that trajectory. So I want to thank you for doing that. Also want to thank you for giving us a rating, a review, and subscribing or following Elevate Podcasts on whichever platform that you listen or watch podcasts. That's important to us. And I read every single review. I'm so thankful for those. Those give the audience or future audience an opportunity to understand what we're all about. And so I just want to thank you for that. And I want to let you know, if you haven't done that already, I'm asking you from the bottom of my heart, please give us a rating, a review, and subscribe. With all that said, I want to dive in and introduce you to Whitney Elkins-Hutten, who is the director of investor education at passiveinvesting.com and a partner in $700 million plus in real estate, including over 5,000 residential units, multifamily, mobile home parks, single family residential, and assisted living, and over 1,400 self-storage units across 8 states. And she also has experience flipping over $3 million in residential real estate. She is amazing. She's friendly. She's energetic. She's driven. She's committed. But she's also extremely approachable. I mean, this is somebody who, she's not acting like she's better than anyone else. Anybody who has the commitment to doing whatever it takes can do what she's done. And I think today you're going to see those patterns. You're going to see why she's had so much success in designing her life through real estate. So without further ado, please enjoy this life-changing conversation with Whitney Elkins-Hutten. Whitney Elkins-Hutten, welcome to Elevate. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
No, it's my pleasure. And you and I we were laughing before. I mean, we just spent 25 minutes catching up and it's like, wait a minute, we should do the podcast, don't you think? Because
Oh
we've
yeah,
had
hit record.
we've had this on the schedule here for 6 weeks. And but we almost used our entire time just catching up, but no, it was a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. You and I got to know each other, I guess about a little over a year ago. And I've been really fascinated with you and your story, your trajectory ever since then. But how have things been since we originally met?
Great. Yeah, I've had some, transitions and, have kind of stepped into a new role with passiveinvesting.com as the director of investor education and, spending time at home with my child. We have chosen to keep her in online school so we can travel more. COVID really showed us we can design the life that we really want, which for us means a lot of travel and flexibility and location freedom. And we're just really kind of, we're building out the dream. I can't say that we're living the dream yet because it evolves every day.
I love that. And it's a good reminder for everyone listening is, you can be in the middle of designing. It may not be the picture perfect story that you have this vision of, but you're in the middle of building that. There's a lot of beauty in that. And I've been reminded by some people that I really appreciate and respect that, where we are in our journey shouldn't be compared with where someone else is in their journey, but it could be compared to where we've been. And I think there's a lot of beauty in looking back and saying, wow, I'm grateful for my progress. So thank you for that reminder. But Whitney, while we dive into this episode and while we dive into this conversation, if you would play a little game with me, I'd love to ask you, if you were to describe yourself in the way that the people who know you best would describe you, what would you say about that?
I love it. So I think, most people see me as very driven and focused and tenacious. And I try to be very humble and open and authentic. And so I think that's people who know me best, really understand that, they see this very driven person, but, there's an underlying, sarcasm is how I hug. I like making jokes. Sometimes I have a hard time being serious when everybody else in the room is being serious. I'm like, life's too short. Why aren't we all smiling and laughing? So, so I think that's how people would describe me.
No, absolutely. And it's been really fun to learn kind of about your real estate trajectory in particular and where you've come from and what you've been able to build and what you're designing, as you mentioned, sort of designing that life and utilizing real estate as this vehicle. So I'm excited to dive into your real estate story and your journey. But I think it's always instructive to understand the person behind that story previous to that. So give us a sense of your upbringing, your backstory a little bit. You were telling me a little bit about this before we started recording today, which I found to be highly insightful. But give me a sense of what was life like growing up and so forth.
Oh, gosh. So part of the conversation that we're having today is that mindset is everything, whether you're going to have success in real estate or whatever you are doing in life, mindset is everything. And for me in my upbringing, I guess, let me back it up. A lot of people ask me the question oh, where did you get this mindset? This very driven, this focused, tenacious mindset. Mm-hmm. And I have trouble articulating where I got that. I mean, I grew up playing sports. I grew up my dad was in the Air Force. My mom was in the medical field. It was, very structured household. And so it was always kind of baked and ingrained in me. And I was so thankful for that. However, as you and I were talking, for me, a lot of people, have to kind of come into their own, in their late teens and early 20s and really kind of figure out who they are. That hit home for me in my 30s. When my parents passed away, my dad passed away first and then my mom. And then I'm like, wait a second, I don't have to be this structured, very planned out person. Who am I now? So
it's almost like you were having an identity crisis at that point in time. You're like, well, wait a minute, where did these beliefs, these thoughts, this perspective, this personality come from? And then you started to question everything. Am I on the right track, perhaps? And maybe you're still unpacking this.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Am I still unpacking this? I think we are all always unpacking everything every day. Like, growth is constant. If you're not growing, we have a coach in common that we like, Trevor McGregor. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? It's a very famous Tony Robbins quote. But for me, the belief system that my parents, cultivated within me, served me extremely well. I was able to, achieve some amazing things, like at a very young age. I played in, I was first chair in the community orchestra. I played on the men's varsity soccer team, not the women's, the men's.
Wow.
I was on the Olympic development team, so I was this high achiever mindset cultivated in me. The thing is that, was it mine? I don't know. I didn't even ask that question of myself until my mom passed away in 2018. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second. I'm free of like any sort of judgment or question that my parents would have of me, like if I chose to do something that was counterintuitive to their belief system. So
I have an interesting thought on this real quick.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to hear what you have to say about this, but the question of, was that belief system yours, is a really interesting question. And I think it's one that we could all kind of reflect on and say, well, is my belief system, or are these beliefs mine, or are they borrowed? And obviously we're influenced by our environment. We're influenced by the things we read, by the media we consume, the people we surround ourselves with. And of course, we're mostly influenced by our parents and our upbringing. And these are some things that are baked into our subconscious that we may or may not ever be aware of until we start to ask this question. And it starts to get really interesting as you start to question and say, well, where did this come from? Because, most ideas, most thoughts, most wisdom is borrowed, right? And we can move that forward and apply that in a way that makes sense for us. But if we don't question that, we don't have the ability of saying, well, is this right for me? Is this in alignment with sort of what my innate nature is? Does that resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. And you and I have I've been asking myself this question for the better part of a year, as you know, because I'm like, wait a second, like, is what I'm doing right now in alignment with me, my personality, my goals, my objectives? But I think going back to that question that I had of myself when my mom passed away, is, I never really fully told her what I was doing in real estate.
Interesting.
She knew. She never asked any deeper questions about it. I never volunteered.
Why didn't you?
Offer. Why?
Yeah. Why didn't you ever tell her?
Well, let me, pose the question to the people that are listening here. At least if people are starting out in real estate, they probably have some friends and family that are like, what on earth are you doing? Yep. You're crazy. Like, if people could raise their hands right now, I would imagine, like, out of 100 people listening or 1,000 people listening to this, 999 would raise their hand to that. And the one person that didn't, I'm like, are you sure?
Whitney, I've been doing this for almost 10 years and people still think that about me. They're like, you're crazy. I have no idea what you're doing and you're crazy.
And I think and I think that's where you have to kind of step into your own and be like, okay, maybe I am crazy, but I'm crazy for myself. I'm going to take control of, like, my destiny. When you don't have those conversations openly, like with family members and friends, you're hiding a part of yourself. So essentially I was hiding a part of my relationship with my parents. My dad passed away before I ever really truly got involved in real estate, but I was definitely hiding that from my mom. And not so much, if she had asked, I would have said something, but it was more so that I just didn't feel that I was going against her values, her mindset, her beliefs. And I just didn't feel, for whatever reason, that I could, like, open up and be truly myself. And so I robbed myself of that experience, and I robbed her of that experience because she didn't fully know who her daughter was. Right. And here's the thing is, maybe it's not as extreme for people. Maybe they can, connect to this in some sort of way. It's not as extreme as their parents have passed away. But, I think this is really a struggle that people are going with on a very granular basis, is that they're like, okay, great, I'm going to just go do me. That's fine. I'm going to pursue my real estate dreams. But when you don't step in fully and own that as your belief system, and be okay with that, rubbing up against other people's belief system that you so love dearly, you rob yourself of having a really, that part of that intimate relationship.
Do you think it was really true that you were really going against her values, or was that just a BS, a belief system, or, what the other phrase of BS is? Do you think that that was true, or was that BS?
To both
Interesting.
BS. Yeah, because I think, especially for me, like, what was cultivated in my household was, being a high achiever. We didn't talk about making mistakes freely. It was, if you made a mistake, great. Did you learn from it? But we didn't really spend much time there. We didn't talk about the emotional component of making a mistake. And how did you, it was moreover, did you correct the action and get your result? Not so much like, what did you mentally learn about yourself or emotionally learn about yourself along the way?
So if we were to unpack that, did you feel like when you were starting to get into real estate, you were immersed in this community of, we embrace failure. Failure is feedback. That's how you improve. And it's like this abundance mentality of, hey, no matter what, I'm going to win because I'm either going to get to my outcome or I'm going to receive feedback that, hey, that outcome isn't what I was meant to receive right now. And here's the growth. Was it because of that, or is there something else?
Well, I'll say that whenever I found that type of community, and it took me a while, when I got into real estate, to really like get into that community, because, I was doing a lot of that, buying the real estate solo for a while. So there was no community. But when I decided to surround myself with community, I was like, oh, this is amazing. We're not in competition. I mean, we are kind of, but everybody's so abundant mindset and opening and welcoming and challenge each other. It was so surreal. I was like, nah, this can't be.
So
There's got to
like,
be
this
an ulterior motive here somewhere.
And so the alignment that you felt like you were out of with your parents or your mom's value and your values in particular were that, hey, you know what? It's not about mistakes. We don't make mistakes. We are high performers. We correct the action and we proceed forward and we get to the outcome. What else? Was there something else that you felt like was out of alignment that prevented you from having these type of conversations or really opening up your identity that you had, stacked on to who you were as a person, now as an investor? What else was preventing you from having those conversations?
I think it was an extension of what was already there, what you've already named, which is, I just didn't feel, when you kind of have that mentality that I need to be, let's take it. A lot of people are a perfectionist. I know that's how, I was brought up in school. Like, you got straight A's. That's what you did, right? High performers. I think a lot of people are recovering perfectionists. I didn't want to have that judgment. I didn't really know what to do with it. I wasn't, afraid of it, but I was avoidant of it. I'm like, I don't want to, I'm going to make an assumption, and we all know what assumes means if we're going to go down to that rabbit hole. But, I was assuming that I was going to get that judgment from my mom. And yeah, I probably would have initially on the surface, but if we could have gotten past that surface judgment, I think there would have been something really deeply beautiful there.
You know what's so interesting? This is real. I've actually never had this type of conversation within the realm of real estate investing. But you think about it, like a recovering perfectionist, that is like, you have to shed that identity to have success in real estate. I don't know about you, but I'm still making mistakes today. I mean, like a lot of them, and every day there has to be some course correction. I think about a plane flying from New York to LA. It's really interesting to me that 98% of the time it's off path. It's off course. And so there's constant course correction. It's 1% in this direction. It's 1% south. It's 1% east. It's 1% west. I mean, obviously you don't want to go east if you're flying from New York to LA. But the fact of the matter is it's a really interesting thought process that can be applied and is applied in our real estate business. But as a recovering perfectionist, the thought of course correction. We shouldn't have to course correct. We should never make those mistakes in the first place. But I think embracing fully the fact that, you know what, we don't know everything. And this is a constantly evolving set of circumstances, not only the market, not only cost of capital, not only, economic events and all these different things, but also how we interact with it in our own psychology, how maybe an investor, a partner, a seller, a broker, an agent, a property manager, how they're interacting psychologically, as well as how they're interacting with their business. There's so many different factors. And so this recovering perfectionism, that I would imagine for you, like many, was an identity that you had to shed. And so maybe that's what you're talking about, is that this metamorphosis of who you became was like, wow, everything became under question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you had some great illustrations there, and I can actually bring up one for me that, was, about the course correction piece that's very like tangible and recent. I am part of like, this most recent transition, of stepping away from being the director of investor relations at a private equity firm and doing very well at capital raising. So I could be at home in alignment with being a mom, being a wife, stepping and designing the life that I truly want. I mean, I'm passionate about real estate, but I know for the next few months, couple years, we were joking around about it. My 9-year-old still likes me. I'm going to take advantage of that, right? Yeah. Now, so I'm keeping my foot in real estate because I'm very passionate about, the power that in wielding that tool to create a life by design. Now, however, getting back to the tangible part of the story, I was working on my Q2 goals. Now, yes, we're a week into Q2. I'm a little behind. Okay. Cut that off, right? Like, not a perfectionist there. But it's that little course correction, because I was writing out what I wanted to do for the next 90 days. And I flipped back to what I had set at the beginning of the year. I'm like, oh, hold on. I'm off course there. That's not what I meant to do. And here's the thing. The perfectionist in me would be like, okay, I need to adjust and I'm going to go do that. The questioner in me, right? Like the person that's involved in it, question like, does that for initial goal at the beginning of the year still hold true? Or is it gone? Or does it need to evolve? Mm-hmm. Right? And that is a mindset that's the part of my mindset that I've been having to the muscle that I've been having to flex over the past probably like 10 to 15 years. In real estate is, things can change. We can evolve. We're not this, rigid, person, that says, oh, I was going to go to med school and I was going to, have my own practice by, age 40 and I'm going to retire at 60. No, like I can choose a different path at any point in time.
So this is a really interesting thought as well. When I think about goals, like I'm kind of on the Earl Nightingale camp where, when you set a goal, you have created your future in advance. And so I'm a big believer in goals. I'm a big believer in setting an intention and allowing, the universe and your subconscious do the heavy lifting and find these opportunities that, in some senses could be synchronicities, or you may say, well, it's a coincidence or whatever. But, I've seen it in my life. I'm sure you've seen it in your life. Where do you draw the line in the example that you just described about, all right, Q2, you're setting goals and you're looking back and saying, well, what did I commit to for the year? And you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm off course based on what I said I wanted to accomplish for Q1. Where do you draw the line between, okay, we need to make a revision in that intention or in that goal and not, over negotiating with yourself? Because the lower self says, oh, that was too big of a goal. Let's just decrease it by half. And, at that point, now it's achievable. Where do you draw that line personally?
Well, I think, so there's let me clarify something here. It's not negotiating the action, the execution of the goal. I'm questioning, is that goal still relevant?
I love that.
So, case in point, one of my goals was to bring on 14 short-term rentals, or not 14, 4 short-term rentals here.
Here's a perfectionist.
Yeah, right. Overachiever. There we go. And so 1 a quarter. And, interest rate, there's a lot of things that have changed in the environment in the past quarter. Does that goal for me to hit 4 this year still hold true? Do I want to pursue 4? Is that the best use of my time and the energy and the funds? Or is there a deeper part of that goal that I actually wanted? Was it the cash flow? So So maybe I set the 4 short-term rentals down and go after, oh, I wanted to generate at least $2,000 a month in cash flow from those goals, or an X percentage. Is there a different way that I could achieve the same result? The 4 short-term rentals were a lead measure, something that I could check off to get to the lag. And so I don't think you should renegotiate the lag measures over time. Once you set a lag measure, that's your compass. But if there's a lead measure that you're setting kind of as a 90-day target, maybe you can renegotiate with that. Now, what you're kind of getting at is if you have a lag measure, and I'm going to give a tangible example of this. I have a lag measure of bringing on X number of investors, within our ecosystem and passiveinvesting.com every single month to quarter. And I know I have to do these 3 or 4 actions every single week or a month in order to make that happen. If I choose to skip a month or a week, it's not that I get to say, oh, I'm not going to make that up. I have to figure out how to make that up in order to meet my goal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually 2 different things that we got to talk about. Are we talking about adjusting the lead measure to achieve the result? Did we miss defining the lag measure? And that's where I was getting at, but we can't, if we know what the lag measure is, we can't get to a goal and renegotiate with ourselves thinking that we can kind of skimp out on the lead measure to achieve the lag. You got to do the lead. You just need to make sure, is it the right lead?
I like that. And it's outcome focused, right? Remaining outcome focused, but being open to feedback from the market, from, set of circumstances, because things are constantly changing. And I mean, the last 3 months, the last 2 years have been a prime example of that, especially in the real estate market. But when you set goals, I mean, do you focus on things that you can control in terms of your own activity, or are you mainly focusing on those lag measures? Is that what you're mainly focusing on? Because sometimes, it's like, let's just give an example. So let's say a listener is saying, all right, well, this year I have a certain amount of acquisitions I want to complete, I want to close, and that's my goal. Should the listener be focusing on that, or should they be focusing on the level of deals that they underwrite or the level of calls that they make? Maybe those are sub goals, and maybe it's both. But what's your opinion?
Yeah, so I'm very much in the Gary Keller camp, right? The goal is, the purpose of a goal is not necessarily to achieve it, but to be appropriate in the moment. So if the goal is to have, 10 acquisitions or 50 acquisitions by, the end of the year, you need to break it down, into the smallest non-negotiable thing that you could possibly do, basically break it down into a habit that you could repeat day in and day out. How many calls did you make? How many new deals did you look at, analyze? How many offers did you make? And keep track of all those lead measures. But again, being responsive to the feedback that you're getting. Here's the thing. You can't judge the response that you're getting in your feedback if you're not actually executing what you said the lead measure was going to be. So let's make math easy. We said we were going to close on 40 deals by the end of the year. That means you need to have 10 under contract in the first quarter. If you need to, have 10 under contract in the first quarter, how many deals do you need to look at that are appropriate to get to that 40? Okay. But you can't even jump that far. How many do you need to look at in order to analyze the right deals?
Right.
And how many deals do you need to be analyzing in order to put in the right offers? And how many offers do you need to be putting in to actually close on the 10?
Mm-hmm.
So once you have all that defined, okay, we went through that super fast. So rewind if you guys need to get that. Once you have that defined, you got to check the boxes. And if you aren't checking those boxes, you can't evaluate the feedback is kind of noise until you're actually committing to doing the habits, the actions that will in turn get you the results. Now, somebody's going, I'm looking at all the deals and I'm analyzing and I'm putting in offers and I'm not able to close. That's where you need to sit. I feel like you should sit with is there something else in the system that needs to be adjusted? Or, then, if you've got all that fluff out, all those obstacles covered, which guys, it takes a lot. There are a lot of obstacles in the way in real estate.
Yes.
Once you kind of get that all assessed out, then you can interrogate reality. Are you in the right market? Are you looking at the right type of the deal for the right market timing? Do you need to bring in a partner? Is there a different way for you to achieve the goal? Then you can start starting to pivot and really understanding what's being effective.
Yeah. And what I've found myself is that there's a few things. One is, when I am getting poor feedback, from sort of activities that I'm generating, the one question is, hey, let's kind of question everything. Do I have the right approach? What do I need to adjust in my strategy? The other thing, it mindset related, in my opinion, it's how committed are you? And are you willing to show the universe that you're defiantly committed to doing whatever it takes? And, it's almost like a game, because you almost look at it and say, well, oh, this is the test. The test is now to, persevere, be persistent, and move forward. The other side of it is, this is a thought process that I feel like has served me so well, is that when we have impatience with actions, but patience with results, it's amazing what can occur. And I've found this in my life in so many ways, especially in real estate. When I set a goal, like let's say it's a quarterly goal, let's say it's an annual goal, there's a lot of times where I look and I'm like, wow, I don't have much time left in this quarter or this year, but it just all of a sudden starts to come together. And there's lagging indicators that come together. It's like almost serendipitously. And I think you look back and it's like, all right, this mindset of, okay, I'm being tested, and my perseverance, my persistence will pay off. I just have to show faith that I'm willing to continue, even when it feels like I'm not getting the feedback. Has that ever happened to you, or does that resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this, March was one of those months. I mean, we had a goal of getting one short-term rental under contract, right? For me, and that's in my personal portfolio. And I actually started off early. I closed one. I'm like, great, I'm going to level up. I'm going to go for two. And we got one under contract again at probably the beginning of February. And it was that nightmare seller that nobody ever wants to deal with. And the deal, long story short, fell out of contract 2 days before closing. Ooh. Seller didn't want to, confirm that, or didn't want to, finalize the inspection resolution. I mean, we had clear to close, we had the appraisal done, we're all ready to cross the finish line. And they, canceled the contract. And I'm sitting there going, but I have an income goal to hit in March. And
like, what are you doing, seller? Hello.
Yeah. Like, I can't control you. Right. What am I going to do now? And that's where we pivoted. And we're like, okay, we've been wanting to test this theory about, starting a camper van business. We have 1 month to get it figured out, to hit our, and not only find it, secure it, get it serviced, get it, all the materials, get the business plan put together, get it, and get it up and start getting it rented to prove the model by the end of the month. And oh, by the way, we're going to take a 10-day vacation in California. So, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, guess what? We're now in the camper van business, so it was, again, like, for me, I had to go back to for what was the actual measure that I was trying to achieve. It was the income goal. Did it have to be a short-term rental? No. How quickly could I pivot? Now we're still looking at short-term rentals to add to our portfolio, but how quickly could I pivot into something that could help me bring in that income? And then, we had been looking at camper vans. It's not like all of a sudden we said, okay, seller canceled their contract. Let's start going on Google and figuring out what we can do.
Right.
We had been thinking about this for several months, but, again, just putting it out to the universe. And I tell you, within 24 hours, we had, like, my husband had found a van. 2 days later, I had the insurance in place. And a couple of days after that, I had the lending in place, and just everything kind of tumbled for us. But we were committed to the outcome. In our minds, failure was not an option yet.
Hey guys, just a quick word from our sponsor, then we'll be right back to the show. This episode of Elevate is brought to you by CF Capital, a national real estate investment firm founded by myself and my business partner, Brian Flaherty. CF Capital's mission is to provide property investment and asset management solutions to help investors like you maximize their returns by investing in high-value multifamily communities. If you are looking for risk-adjusted alternative investments in quality apartment communities, investors are seeking tax optimized cash flow with appreciation upside without all the hassles of management, you might benefit from learning more about investing alongside our team. You're invited to reach out and learn more about how you can invest with us by visiting cfcapllc.com. We're also currently offering a free ebook called The Bottom Line, 10 Ways to Increase Cash Flow in an Apartment Complex. Whether you're a new or experienced investor, we're confident you'll find massive value in this resource. So go get your free copy today at cfcapllc.com. And now please enjoy the rest of the show. That is the difference. The key word was committed to the outcome, because there's a lot of people who are just interested. They're interested in an extra $2,000 a month in passive income. Well, yes, I'm interested in that. But when I get knocked off course, when the seller cancels the contract 2 days before closing, well, I guess it's just not meant for me. This business is terrible. I'm the victim, all these things, but you remained committed to the outcome. And so the other thing that I think is interesting about this whole circumstance with you, and I feel like it's a theme, it's a pattern that you've exhibited throughout your real estate investing life so far, is that you're in this new sort of asset class. And what you're doing now is you're like, okay, I'm getting to my outcome, but I now got to get myself out of the management of this asset class. So now it's like you've created this outcome. You have another issue, a challenge that now you're working through. Is that something that has been a pattern that you've kind of worked through over the years as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I used to be, probably at a younger age, in my late teens and 20s, very planned, and I almost knew the outcome. And there was a fear of success and a fear of failure, right? Like I had everything planned. I needed to know what was going to happen after I achieved the goal, and if I couldn't sustain that after, I wouldn't execute sometimes, right?
That makes sense.
Perfectionist. Whereas now I'm like, okay, ready, fire, aim. I have gotten myself and my family in, some not, terrible situations, but, that's, where we're at right now with this whole launching the camper van business. It's like, we're like, wow, we want to travel. If we're not here to lease out the van, we don't earn income that week. Right? Or if we're not here when it's returned, how do we know it got returned in a great condition? Now we got to start working ourselves out of the business. But I think it's being okay to only have just as much information as you need in order to get started, and then figuring out what you don't know along the way. Some people call it building the parachute as you jump out of the airplane. I would like to think that we have actually the parachute on and tied to our back, and we kind of know how to pull the ripcord, but trying to figure out, do our legs need to be extended fully when we hit the ground, or do we need to crumple, or
right.
We've got some time before we hit the ground to try to figure that out,
Yeah, you're falling from the sky and it's like, hey, consultant, coach, tell me, what do I need to do when I get closer? I think I've got 30 minutes, but what do I do when I get down there, right?
Yeah, or finding somebody, or even a mentor. We went and found, somebody, in my mentor group that had a camper van business. I reached out. I'm like, guys, we bought a camper van. We got our first rental. Oh, by the way, how did you structure the business? So, and we had some great conversation. We got great feedback. And here's the unique thing is, reaching out for help, you're going to get a multitude of ways of how people do it. You can take all that information and build something that's completely your own, which is what, we are doing with this particular business.
I feel like the foundation is this resourcefulness mindset that says, hey, I'm going to figure it out, and I have the ability to figure it out. And I have the resilience to be able to, when I get knocked down, to be able to get back up. And when I make a mistake, it's not fatal. And so it is this choice, I believe, is this choice that, you've chosen, that when you make a decision, you don't have all the answers, you will get them along the way. I don't know about you, but that was a big shift for me as well, because I think growing up, it's like, well, don't you want to get an A on the test? And to get an A on the test, you've got to study. You got to have your ducks in a row. And before you go in and sit down, you better know what you're doing, or you're not going to get that result. And it's just way different. You have to unlearn that. That sounds like a process that maybe you've gone through as well.
Yes. And I think there's, the resourcefulness. I think that's where, if, we're all striving to get there. It's different than having resources. And I think that, especially for investors that are starting out in real estate, and starting to level up, or when they hit a level of achievement and they need to push past that, they struggle with that. I work with investors, in my consulting practice that are just getting into real estate, or, getting past like 2 or 3 units and want to get up to 10 or 20 units. And the first thing that they run into is I ran out of money. I don't have the resources in order to execute my plan, right? That's different from being resourceful, asking that question, how can I, and trying to figure out all the different ways that you could possibly solve that, as crazy as they may sound and uncomfortable as it may sound. And so I think, and every time it's a muscle that has to be flexed. And the sooner you can start flexing that muscle, it will become a habit. Right? It's like going to the gym. Like if you're lifting 20-pound dumbbell weights, the first couple of times, and you've never lifted weights before, that hurts. And there's going to be some pain the next day, delayed muscle onset soreness, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas, over time, you work your way up to lifting that heavy weight, it's easy. If you take a break, you can come back to it and be like, yeah, you know what to expect, right? Because you've got that muscle memory built up. Same thing here. And that's something that we're really trying to work with in cultivating in our child is not solving the problem for her, not giving the resources to where she can actually solve it all right there herself, but just making her like ask the questions, how can I? How can I? How can I? And here's the cool thing. This goes back, it's kind of circling back to the whole belief system. As a parent, I have a belief system for my child. I'm like, this is how you solve the problem, kid. But I ask her, how can you do this? What are some other ideas? And the ideas she comes up with sometimes I never would have thought of.
Wow. That's because we all have infinite creativity. We have infinite resourcefulness. Every single person listening to this episode, to this conversation, has that within them. And that question, it puts us in the world of possibilities. How can I? It reminds me of Robert Kiyosaki's like, it's not, I can't afford this. It's how can I afford this? One of the things that I've realized in real estate is that there is so many different creative ways to structure deals, to solve problems. And I'm sure you would agree with me, Whitney, we get paid on solving problems. Like as investors, like it's not about, hey, we just have capital and then we just go and it's this perfect scenario. It's about putting puzzle pieces together to solve a problem. So does that resonate with you? And that question, I mean, because I was thinking about somebody else who I know who's looking to start a business. It's a retail business and it's not really directly within real estate, although obviously she would be either leasing a space or perhaps owning a building. And her first thought was, well, I don't have money for that. I can't do that. But, she took herself out of the world of possibilities immediately. And so I thought about what Robert Kiyosaki says, well, how can you afford that? How can you put yourself in the world of possibilities? But it sounds like that's just been a muscle that you've continued to strengthen yourself just by asking that. Is there any other tips that you might suggest?
Well, I would expand on that in a couple of ways. That is, first of all, somebody has to show you, you have to learn how to do that. Maybe you learn it on a podcast, maybe you learn it in a book, maybe you learn it by listening to conversations like this, right? Mm-hmm. You have to actually understand that is an option to ask that question, how can I, is versus I can't do that. Then I think the follow-up to that is, what if you keep running into the obstacle? You have to take the consistent and persistent action. And when you hit the obstacle, you have to be tenacious enough to not take no for an answer. That is something that I learned in, sales is no just means not now.
Yes.
Me no, and I'm like, okay, great. I'll come back like a week later. I can be kind of annoying that way sometimes. I'll be like, great, I'll follow up with you in a month. And the person might actually mean no, but more often than not, they're setting a boundary and they mean not now. And so I think that is kind of the missing puzzle piece, is when you can't take hitting up against the obstacle or the ceiling as that feedback of no, that this is not for me. I need to pivot. I can't close a 20-unit building because I can't get financing. I've asked, how can I? Have you, for one, to your point, have you exhausted all interrogated reality and exhausted all ideas and resourcefulness in order to make that happen? And then two, maybe you have, And if you have, is it just a not now and you can pivot into something else, right? But again, it goes back to being married to that outcome, committed to that outcome. And the questions that I love asking myself every single year, my husband and I sit down in our annual planning is, well, what do we want? Why do we want it? And who do we have to become to get it? And it's funny, because you think you've answered that already. You're like, one and done, check. Like, let's move on. No, you have to continually ask yourself that. So again, you can go back to that LA to New York flight and make those course corrections along the way.
Okay, I want to unpack what you just said there about who do we have to become in order to get it, because I think that's the key phrase, and that's why I'm a huge believer in personal development, because I believe your success lags your own personal development and whatever it is that you're looking to accomplish. But one of the things I just wanted to make a comment on before we get to that is you're talking about the tenacity. Not taking no for an answer, no being a not right now. There's a mindset piece. There's a conversation that we have within our head when someone tells us no. And so the question is, are we opening space to hear that conversation and listen to that conversation and recognize, well, where did this come from? Because the conversation is, well, they're saying no, so back up and please don't do this again, and don't embarrass them, don't embarrass yourself, and don't bother them because, they really mean no. When, I think when we start to question this, we start to put ourselves in the world of possibilities. Well, what if this really is a not right now? And then what if we can actually serve this other individual while collectively getting closer to our goals? So to me, that's a game changer. So I just appreciated you bringing that up. But talk to me about, I want to get granular on when you were thinking about this year, your goals, the what, the why, and then the who do you have to become? So who do you have to become this year to get where you want to go? I'm just curious.
Well, so I even break that down into 3 additional questions. Like what, again, the mindset, the first is like, right, do I have the right mindset? Do I believe I can do this? Am I committed to the goal? Am I committed to the outcome? Am I committed to making the changes necessary in order to achieve what I want? Kind of your point. If you're interested, you might have some success, but if you're committed, you're going to figure out how to make it happen. Then getting to the granular execution side, like what I look at my goals, like what skills am I lacking that I need in order to achieve this goal? Now, I think I do want to kind of like put an asterisk here, because it doesn't have to mean that you have to learn all the skills. If you don't or can't or don't want to, or don't like to do that, go find somebody who does. For me, guys, I'm not your social media person. I am on social media. Do I do it? No. So that goes, if you haven't ever read the book, Who Not How by Dan Sullivan, amazing book. So I kind of like offer that as a tool, like as you're thinking through these skills, maybe there's just not enough time in the day for you to learn all the skills. That's fine. Go find somebody who does have the skills, the who, to help you achieve your how, right? Like what you actually want.
Absolute game changer.
When I read that book the second time, that's when I was like, I figured out how to apply it to some business, but then I started applying it to my life, like personal life. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing.
I know. Well, you're probably like me and many of the listeners where, we kind of learned growing up. It's like, if it's to be, it's up to me, and I think there's certainly value in that thought process and, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. But, we close ourselves off to so many other possibilities by just thinking that it's all up to us and we have to do this and we have to do that. And it's like, wait a minute. There's something else here. There's this whole new paradigm when we allow other people to help us accomplish our goals. Not even just help us, but maybe they can accomplish the goals for us and they receive something as well. There's just so many different angles to this.
Oh, absolutely. And, kind of goes back to another Gary Keller quote, and I'm going to bumble it, but hopefully you guys get the sentiment here, is like, when you're thinking about, if you're bringing on who's to achieve your results, how can you expand your world to be big enough to where they can achieve their result that they're looking for? And that's how you're going to understand if you guys are aligned with each other. It makes the difference between an employee and a team member. right? Somebody who's really like, you guys are working cohesively together to achieve a result. And so those are two questions: the mindset, the skills, and then you have to understand the network. Have you surrounded yourself with the people that are going to help you achieve your goals? You may have to kind of like fire some people that are in your life in order to create space, or to say not now, right? To create a boundary with them. But again, like, how do you surround yourself in that network? For me, I love being in masterminds that are where I'm not the smartest person in the room. Okay. There are masterminds where I give back, and then I want somebody to reach back and give me a hand. So I love I call it I want to be the not smartest person in the room often, if I can.
Well, that requires a lot of humility too. That's not easy to do, but that's also a muscle that you have to build over time, and recognize that obviously, it feels a little bit uncomfortable when, you're surrounded by other people who are doing bigger things than you, maybe have more experience than you, maybe are more intelligent than you in certain ways. But, obviously that there's all these things that happen. It's like osmosis when you surround yourself with other people who are doing things that you want to do. So it almost happens subconsciously beneath the surface. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, well, wait a minute, I've become, like these people that I really admire. And obviously you get tips, tactics, strategies, course corrections along the way, but it's almost who you become as a part of that process. So I'm with you 100% in masterminds. It's reaching up, because there's times where you can give, there's some components that maybe you are who these other people need to know in terms of a certain category, your business or life. But then there's all these other categories that they perhaps have more expertise than you do. I mean, is that something that you've experienced yourself in masterminds?
Absolutely. I'm in one, right. The mastermind I'm in right now, a women's mastermind. I never in a million years thought I would be like doing short-term rentals or camper vans. I was like, I was diehard buy and hold. No way. Bitcoin? No, not for me. Like, I was interested in Bitcoin. I wanted to learn more, but I mean, there were just, different asset classes that I never even imagined myself being in. There are things that I've done with my health. My background is in, nutrition and public health. There are things you want to talk about not having humility. I was like, I got this, right? And there are things that I've learned, like, after being in this mastermind, that there's just a more efficient and effective way of doing things. The underlying foundation and principles still apply, but I don't have to do it the way that I was doing it. I'm learning and evolving. And then you're right. It does take an amount of humility to understand, to be the person that sits back to listen and ask questions before, just really, stepping out and, maybe, being the smartest person in the room.
Well, Napoleon Hill calls the mastermind the eighth wonder of the world. And, it's about obtaining the power that you need, that's necessary to achieve your goals. And that power comes through other people. It comes through other networks. It comes through insights, ideas. I mean, one idea can be worth, well more than the price of admission, or it could be worth, much more than that as well. So I just think that that's a great reminder. So it's like, what tribe and what community are we plugged into? Because that influences the way that we think, the way that we behave, the way that we act, the way that we ask ourselves questions. But also it impacts sort of our subconscious mind as well in the activities that we're engaging in. So this is just so valuable. Whitney, I just want to thank you for being a part of this conversation. I want to transition to the rapid fire section of the podcast. I think a lot of our conversation today has been rare. It's been uncommon. And so today I want to talk about the rare air questionnaire. When I think about continuing to grow, when we were thinking about, okay, well, our success lags perhaps our own personal growth. I've got a few questions for you as it relates to personal development. One of which, you mentioned a book there just recently, Who Not How. But if you had to point to 2 or 3 of the most impactful books otherwise that you've read over the past few years, what would those be and why?
Oh my gosh. So The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, that is, it fundamentally changed everything in my life. It gave me a structure for how to actually set goals that were in alignment with my values, and a framework to do that with my family as well. So I was not railroading them. I don't know about you guys, like if you're in a relationship or in a marriage, there might be one person who's a goal setter and the other person who's not so much. One person who's very involved in real estate and the other person's like, hey babe, I love what the real estate gives us, but I don't love real estate. Right. So that book and framework and community has really given me, again, the framework in order to, look at life more holistically, but also in partnership with my family. So we're all designing this life that we want. Another book that I think, people are kind of, resonated with the initial part of our conversation around belief systems, and you're struggling with who are you with your family and your friends or in your community, and kind of have that double identity, the secret life of being a real estate investor, or the secret life of not being a real estate investor when you're with them. There's a book called Claim Your Power by Mastin Kipp, and it's a 40-day progression that actually helps you uncover what these belief systems are and where you got them, and just really it's a lot of self-help, but just really kind of honoring how they served you when you created them and at that stage in your life, and how you might need to give them a nice, like, great hug and let them go. So those are two books that I would suggest.
Yeah, it was when you were talking about that earlier, it reminded me of a book that I read, and I have not read Claim Your Power, so I'll have to check that out. We'll put links in the show notes as where the listeners can find both books that you just mentioned. But it reminded me of a book that I read a couple of years ago called The Big Leap. And what I learned was that I felt like I was abandoning my family. And this was a total subconscious belief that I was abandoning my family by attaining more and more success as an investor, as an entrepreneur. And because I didn't come from that, I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial household, we're, kind of middle class and so forth. And I didn't ever realize this. But then once I shed light on this belief, I'm like, well, that's not really true. It's like, I'm not dishonoring my family by continuing to, go after bigger goals. So it was just an interesting breakthrough that I had. And it sounds like you had a similar experience going through that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to write that down. I'm going to read that book. Yeah.
There you go. I love it. Well, it's always good to give a recommendation during the podcast when I'm looking for recommendations from you. So thank you. Aside from what we've already talked about today, and maybe we haven't talked about a lot of this, but what's the biggest way that you elevate your life on a daily basis, Whitney?
Well, I'm a big believer of putting an oxygen mask on first. So if you guys are ever on a plane, you have kids, they come around and, they say, put your oxygen mask on first before that of your child. And the reason is so you can stay upright and able to take care of those around you, right? It's, if you run out of oxygen and you can't take care of the people around you, like, everybody hurts. And so, for me, it starts off with my morning routine, getting up, not looking at everybody else's priorities at the day, which means you're not looking at your inbox, getting out, getting some fresh air. For me, I'm an avid runner. I'm a moving meditator. There is such thing as moving meditation, but I do really honestly enjoy running. So I do that. Some days I listen to a podcast, something that's very uplifting. I have a hard and fast rule. I'm not listening to, what's going on in the news. This is all about self-development. I'm nourishing my body. I'm nourishing my mind. And then, taking care of, like, my health, like, getting a nice, great breakfast in, my vitamins, getting enough water, getting my green drinks in. As a nutritionist, I know you should spread some of these throughout the day. I also know myself as a human being, I'm going to forget by 1:00 in the afternoon. So my goal is to win the day by 10 a.m. and focusing on just purely, like, what are those big rocks I need to move by 10 a.m. before I open my email. And yeah, it annoys some people in my life, but that's how I've been able to achieve a lot of my results, is by ignoring everything else, getting my stuff done. And then after 10 a.m., the wheels can come off. I still won the day.
This really resonates with me, and I've been thinking about this even more so just becoming a new father recently, with our twins. It's like, well, I want to be here for them. I want to do everything that they need. But the only way I can do that is if I invest in myself. Like, I got to get a workout in. I got to drink my water. I got to get some fresh air. Like, I got to go walk the dog and get some fresh air. And like, I need to not listen to anything. I just need to think at times. Maybe I need to have a little journal session once I can clear my head, so that I can show up in the best way as an investor, as an entrepreneur, so that I can provide for the family, so that I can create opportunities and all that kind of stuff. Like, to me, it's like, okay, now I can do what I need to do now, so it's, I don't know, it's shifting those priorities. And to me, it's like hitting a bigger domino to knock over smaller and, many more dominoes. I don't know if that kind of imagery makes sense to you, but thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, definitely. And, that's something that I really, I did all those things. It's just that I did them at a different time of day. When my energy level was low and I wasn't reaping all the benefits out of them, both like with my mind, my body, and my spirit. And when I read that book, Claim Your Power, and, that's something that he brings up, you can do things for yourself and you can do things for those immediately in your family, and then do things for others. People orient those three categories in very different ways. And sometimes they even eliminate categories. Growing up, in, a Southern family, the way I did, it was others, family.
Mm-hmm.
There was no self. That's just not what we were taught. Right. So, that really helped me break that belief system and kind of orient things in a more sustainable, sequence, to where I could actually step into my fullest self and actually, have energy left over for other people.
I know. I like that. Well, the reason why I like that so much. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to mention, also, I tapped into it, a little bit, but, just having those, a regular time, if you have a spouse, you hear it a lot on other podcasts, but I can't, suggest it enough, having an annual planning meeting, and then regular times that you meet, but make it fun and engaging. You can do like a date night, where you're just, having fun and playing games with each other, or going out of the house, but also have a money meeting where you guys are talking about some of those things, the not so fun things, potentially, money, finances, but checking in on those goals, because really, like you said, it's those, little 1% course corrections that are going to keep you together, aligned, and actually pointing in the same direction.
Yeah. I mean, any partnership, including a marriage or a relationship, requires communication. And there's a lot of things that we don't want to talk about at times, but it's important for us to do so. It sounds like you are maybe like myself and my wife, and we actually have traction. We use traction in our family. Do you do the same thing?
No.
Okay. All right.
We like I said, you utilize mostly the one thing framework, but a lot of those frameworks, be it traction, eMarith, or whatever, they have
probably pretty similar.
A tremendous amount of similarities to them.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing that we do on top of that is also, doing a regular dream session with the family, to where we're capturing, what everybody wants to do. Like, what are some things that you want to learn, places you want to go? How do you want to give back? Because again, for me, I'm the goal setter in the family. Everybody else will set goals, but I'm the one that's moving really fast and pushing.
Mm-hmm.
It could be really easy for me to run over everybody if I didn't, take a step back and just understand where they are and what fulfills them in their cups.
There's not a right time of the year to dream. You should dream all throughout the year. And, a lot of times it's like, oh, it's December, I should set goals. Well, I like that reminder. Let's have regular dream sessions, whether it's, individually, with our spouse, with our family. I like that a lot. And it's more so, it's not just, hey, well, how much real estate do I want to buy? It's, well, what do we want our life to be like? What conditions of our life? What things do we want to learn? Where do we want to go? What do we want to experience? What smells do we want? What things do we want to learn how to do? What tastes do we want to experience? I mean, that is what life is all about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I learned this on a podcast. What makes you happy? If you can boil it down to three things, it's the experiences you have, the ways you grow, and the ways you contribute. And so we really, honestly, our TV in our sunroom. We have a second room that has a sunroom, and we have, my daughter and I have these big long butcher sheets, and they're broken up in those three categories, and we draw on them what we want to do. And, and we leave it posted up so we can constantly add to it. And then we can visually check it off. And then we do that at least once a quarter. Some cool things that have made it on there, like space camp. We were talking about Space Camp, the movie. That was the thing whenever in the 80s, when I was a kid. And I was like, man, that would be cool to go to space camp. And I just looked it up one night. I'm like, we can go to space camp.
Seriously.
Wow.
That is so cool. Well, thank you for that reminder and that inspiration. I think there's a lot of application that all of us can do now. It's like, well, let's go dream. Let's think about those categories and what would we love to do? If there were no limits in our future, what would we love to experience? And thank you for that. What would we love to contribute? Thank you for that reminder. Whitney, what's the biggest way that you elevate others around you?
So I love the ways that I give back is I do a weekly mastermind or masterclass with passiveinvesting.com. You guys can find me there. Go to passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. I got some free resources on how to get started in passive real estate. I have my passive masterclass on Tuesdays, as well as you can jump on the phone with me there. If you're just starting off in real estate, maybe like 1 to 20 units, looking to buy single family houses, reach out to me over at Ash Wealth. I've got some free resources there for you too. Again, kind of giving back on, all my knowledge, time, and expertise. And all the things that I figured out getting into real estate, really trying to help people shortcut their path. And, again, like I'm all about family. So another way that I give back is just trying to be 100% present, for my family, which that doesn't mean that I have perfect balance. It just means I try to focus intently, when I'm switching back and forth between work and being with them. Because, if you think about it, our children, right? And even if you don't have children, maybe you have some other, you have a child in your life, they are the future. If you can pour into them, just think they're going to impact hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even millions of people, in their future. So you talk about, elevating somebody's growth. I mean, I have to make sure that I'm doing that at home.
I'm almost thinking of, you think about like acupuncture, it's like this little needle makes this big impact, and we can make a big impact if we focus our attention in one place at one time, one person at one time, one, activity at one time. You were talking about the one thing earlier. We're always out of balance. There's no balance. There's no such thing. Like you and I are here right now. We're not with our kids, right? We're not with our family. We're not doing this dream session, but that's not to say that that's being lost, but we have to be the best that we can be at any moment. Whitney, this has been an awesome conversation. I've really, really enjoyed myself. I hope you have too. I hope the listeners have. Thank you for being here. I want to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for, being that recovering perfectionist that, in many ways, I'm sure that was not easy. And, going through that metamorphosis that you did in your 30s, from your identity and continuing to push forward, continuing to grow, continuing to share that with other people, and being as enthusiastic as you are, it's very, very palpable. I'm really enjoying getting to know you and becoming your friend. But Whitney, is there any parting thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to share with Elevate Nation today?
Yeah, guys, it's all a journey. There's not a destination here. And I think that's what we have to, with anything, with your goals, but even like with your own, self-growth, we talk about being a recovering perfectionist. Guess what? Recovering perfectionists do. Whenever they have self-doubt, they become perfectionists.
Oh my gosh, so true.
Yeah. So, but that's where you just have to, you mentioned the word earlier, you have to have faith and grace in yourself and just, make that 1%, correction again, to get back on track and, heading in the direction that you really want to go. So thank you so much for having me on. This has been amazing.
No, it's absolutely my pleasure again, Whitney. Thank you again. And the listeners can find you again at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com or on LinkedIn. And again, the last thing, we'll put a link in the show notes as to where the listeners can find your weekly Passive Investing Made Simple Masterclass. So Whitney, until next time, thanks again for being on Elevate.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Elevate Nation, what an awesome conversation with Whitney Elkins-Hutten. And, it's always, I know it's going to be a good conversation when I don't touch the notes and the plans that I had for the conversation. It was totally conversational, totally organic. And wow, there's just so much gold there when you think about the level of mindset required to design the life of our dreams and utilize this vehicle of real estate. Whether you love real estate or whether you like it or whether you don't care anything about it, it can obviously be a vehicle that can help us design our dreams. And the undercurrents are, how are we interacting from our perspective with challenges, with our goals, with the outcomes that we're either committed to. By the way, we should be committed. If we're not, if we're just interested, we should definitely ask ourselves what's going on with that. And what would it look like if we became defiantly committed to doing whatever it takes to get to our outcomes? There is so much gold here when you think about setting goals, when you think about designing that life, when you think about living a life of your dreams, when you think about utilizing dream sessions instead of just, well, I want to create this amount of passive income and, this, that, and the other. Well, what type of dreams do you want to live? What type of life do you want to live? What type of experiences? What type of people do you want to be a part of your network? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What do you want to learn? What do you want to contribute? Who do you want to become yourself? That's what this is all about. I hope you really enjoyed this. This has been a phenomenal conversation for me and one that I'm going to take with me for a long time. I can't wait to re-listen to it myself. I want to encourage you to re-listen to the show. We learn twice as much when we re-listen to a podcast. I also want to encourage you to have a discussion with a friend, pay it forward and share this episode with someone else and share with them your distinctions, your takeaways. What are those, by the way? What are your top 1, 2, or 3 takeaways? If you just take one, that's key. That's huge. Go ahead. Just take one takeaway and apply that immediately. Is it a dream session? Is it goal setting? Is it something regarding course correction on your goals? Is it something to do with being resourceful in the development of your business? Is it, getting clear on who you want to become yourself and who you need to become to create the life of your dreams? What is it that you took away from this episode? I want to encourage you to dive into that and ultimately make a plan to take massive action. I want to thank you so much for listening. It's been my pleasure. Until next time, Elevate Nation, thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit elevatepod.com.